I was standing in the rain outside the Grandview Banquet Hall at 9:47 on a Saturday night, mascara running down my cheeks, my dress soaked through, and my husband's words still ringing in my ears. Don't you dare come back inside until you're ready to get on your knees and apologize to my mother. That's the image I want you to hold in your mind. Me, Ashley Brennan, 31 years old, 5 months into a pregnancy I hadn't announced yet, shivering on a sidewalk in suburban Connecticut while 120 guests celebrated my mother-in-law's 30th wedding anniversary inside a warm, golden-lit ballroom. My phone was dead. My purse was still on the table next to my untouched slice of cake. I had no car keys, no wallet, no way home. And then a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The passenger window rolled down, and a man I'd never seen before leaned across the console, holding an umbrella out toward me. He had calm eyes, a navy suit, and the kind of quiet confidence that made you feel like he already knew your whole story. "You look like you need to get out of the rain," he said. I should have walked away. I should have gone back inside and done exactly what my husband demanded. But something in me, something that had been slowly dying for 3 years, whispered, "Don't you dare apologize for telling the truth." So I got in the car. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up soaking wet outside my own mother-in-law's party, you need to understand how I ended up in that family in the first place. Let me take you back 4 years. I met Brandon Hale at a friend's 4th of July barbecue in Stamford. I was 27, working as a junior financial analyst at a mid-size firm downtown, splitting a 2-bedroom apartment with my college roommate, Jennifer. I had a decent credit score, 741, which I was proud of, a modest 401k, and absolutely zero drama in my life. Brandon was 30, tall, sandy-haired, with this boyish grin that made you feel like you were the only person at the party. He worked in commercial real estate, drove a white BMW that he kept immaculate, and had this way of listening to you that felt almost too good to be real. He brought me a drink before I asked for one. He remembered the name of my cat, Oliver, after I mentioned it once. On our 3rd date, he took me to this tiny Italian place in New Haven where the owner knew his family, and he ordered in Italian, and I thought, this is the kind of man women write about in those "How I Met My Husband" columns. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Within a year, we were engaged. He proposed at the same Italian restaurant, on one knee, with a 1.2-carat princess-cut ring that I later learned cost $8,400. His mother, Karen Hale, cried at the engagement dinner and hugged me so tightly I could smell her Chanel No. 5 for hours afterward. "Welcome to the family, sweetheart," she said. I always wanted a daughter. I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. Our wedding was beautiful, a September ceremony at a vineyard in Mystic, 80 guests, a live jazz trio, and a sunset that looked like it had been ordered from a catalog. My parents flew in from Arizona. My dad walked me down the aisle and whispered, "You picked a good one, Ash." Brandon's best man, his college buddy Derek, gave a speech about how Brandon had told him after our first date that he'd found the one. I remember standing at the reception, slow dancing with my new husband, thinking, I don't deserve this much happiness. Looking back, maybe that thought was a warning. The first year of marriage was genuinely wonderful. We rented a townhouse in Fairfield, $2,800 a month, which was tight on our combined salaries, but we made it work. Brandon cooked on Sundays. I handled the budget. We had date nights on Fridays and lazy Saturday mornings where we'd stay in bed until noon, Oliver curled between us, the whole world outside our window feeling distant and irrelevant. Brandon's family was close. His parents, Karen and Richard Hale, lived 20 minutes away in a 4-bedroom colonial that Karen referred to as the family home, as if it were a historical landmark. His younger sister, Megan, was 26 and still living at home, working part-time at a boutique and spending the rest of her time posting lifestyle content on Instagram. Richard was quiet, pleasant, the kind of man who shook your hand firmly and then disappeared into his study. Karen was the engine of that family, loud, opinionated, always organizing something. Sunday dinners at the Hale house were mandatory. Not technically, of course, but the one time I suggested we skip because I had a migraine, Karen called Brandon 3 times in an hour, and he spent 20 minutes on the phone reassuring her we weren't pulling away from the family. After he hung up, he looked at me with this expression, half apologetic, half something else, and said, "It's just easier if we go, babe." So we went, every Sunday. And I smiled and helped Karen set the table and complimented her pot roast and pretended I didn't notice the way she'd correct me in front of everyone. Little things at first. The way she'd rearrange the silverware I'd just placed. The way she'd say, "Oh, Ashley, that's not how we do napkins in this house," with a laugh that made it sound like a joke. It wasn't a joke. But I told myself it was fine. Every family has quirks. Every mother-in-law needs time to warm up. Jennifer told me I was overthinking it. Brandon told me his mom just has high standards. My own mother, when I called her one Tuesday night and mentioned Karen's habit of criticizing my cooking, said, "Honey, kill her with kindness. That's how you win." So I killed her with kindness. I brought wine to every Sunday dinner. I remembered Karen's birthday, her anniversary, her favorite flowers, white peonies, which cost $45 a bunch at the florist on Main Street. I offered to help with Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. I complimented her house, her garden, her hair. And for a while, it seemed to work. Karen would pat my hand at the dinner table and say, "You're a sweet girl, Ashley." She'd tell her friends I was lovely. She invited me to her book club. She even gave me a framed photo of me and Brandon for our first anniversary, inscribed on the back, "To my favorite daughter-in-law." I was her only daughter-in-law, but still, it felt like acceptance. The cracks started appearing in our second year of marriage. It began with the house. Brandon and I had been talking about buying. Renting at $2,800 a month felt like throwing money away, and we'd saved up $32,000 for a down payment. I'd been researching neighborhoods, talking to a realtor named Linda Park, who specialized in first-time buyers in Fairfield County. We found a 3-bedroom Cape Cod in Trumbull, listed at $385,000, a little above our budget, but manageable with both our incomes. I was excited. I showed Brandon the listing on a Thursday night, spreadsheet already prepared, monthly mortgage at $2,150, property taxes, insurance, the whole picture. He looked at the numbers, nodded, and said, "Let me talk to my mom." I paused. About what? She knows the market. She sold real estate for 15 years before she retired. "Brandon, we have a realtor." "I know, but Mom knows things realtors won't tell you. Trust me." I let it go. I shouldn't have. 2 days later, Brandon came home from his parents' house with a new plan. Karen had concerns about the Trumbull house. The neighborhood was changing. The schools were not what they used to be. Instead, she'd found a listing in Fairfield, a 4-bedroom colonial, $520,000, in a neighborhood 5 minutes from the Hale family home. "We can't afford that," I said, staring at the listing on his phone. "Mom said she and Dad could help with the down payment." My stomach tightened. "Help how much?" $60,000. I set his phone down on the counter. "Brandon, that's not help. That's leverage." He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means if your parents put 60 grand into our house, your mother will feel like she owns a piece of it, and a piece of us." "That's ridiculous, Ashley. She's trying to help. She's trying to control where we live so she can be 5 minutes away." The argument lasted 2 hours. It was our worst fight to date. Not screaming, not throwing things, but that cold, quiet kind of fighting where every sentence is measured and every pause is loaded. Brandon slept on the couch. In the morning, he made coffee and said, "Let's table it for now." We tabled it. But something shifted that night. I saw, for the first time, that when it came to a choice between my judgment and his mother's, Brandon didn't hesitate. He didn't even consider that I might be right. I called Jennifer that night after Brandon fell asleep. She listened to everything, then said, "Ash, this is the part where you decide what kind of marriage you're going to have." "What do you mean?" "I mean either you set a boundary now, or Karen Hale is going to be your third roommate for the rest of your life." I told myself I'd set the boundary. I told myself I'd talk to Brandon calmly, clearly, like the financial analyst I was, with data and logic and a plan. But then Karen called me the next morning, her voice sweet as honey, and said, "Ashley, darling, I found the most wonderful curtains for the master bedroom of that Fairfield house. I know you haven't decided yet, but I just couldn't resist. Should I send you a photo?" And I realized, with a sinking feeling that settled into my bones like winter cold, she wasn't waiting for us to decide. In Karen Hale's mind, the decision was already made. I just didn't know it yet. We ended up buying the Trumbull house. That was my one victory, if you can even call it that, and it cost me more than I realized at the time. I sat Brandon down on a Tuesday night with 2 glasses of wine and the spreadsheet I'd updated with every possible scenario. I showed him the numbers for the Fairfield house, with his parents' $60,000 contribution, the higher property taxes, the HOA fees Karen conveniently hadn't mentioned, $380 a month for that neighborhood, and the reality that even with the gift, our monthly housing cost would be $3,200, nearly $1,000 more than the Trumbull option. Brandon stared at the spreadsheet for a long time. Then he said, "You're right, the numbers don't work." I almost cried with relief. But the next part, telling Karen, was something Brandon insisted on doing alone. "Let me handle her," he said. "She'll take it better coming from me." He drove to the Hale family home on a Wednesday evening. I sat on our couch with Oliver on my lap, refreshing my phone every 30 seconds. He was gone for 3 hours. When he came back, his jaw was tight and his eyes were red around the edges, and all he said was, "It's done. We're going with Trumbull." I didn't ask what Karen had said. I didn't want to know. But I found out anyway, because Karen didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silence, no Sunday dinner invitations, no calls, no texts. When I asked Brandon if we should be worried, he said, "She's processing. Give her space." As if his 58-year-old mother were a teenager sulking about a canceled prom. When Karen finally broke the silence, it was with a phone call, not to me, but to Brandon, in which she announced that she'd made peace with our decision and wanted us to come to Sunday dinner again. Brandon relayed this like it was good news, like we'd been granted parole. I went, I smiled, I brought white peonies. Karen hugged me at the door, but her hands didn't touch my back. It was the kind of hug you give a coworker at a retirement party, perfunctory, hollow, performed for an audience. Richard shook my hand. Megan barely looked up from her phone. And at dinner, Karen said something that lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. She was talking about a neighbor who'd just renovated their kitchen, and she turned to me with that smile. You know the one. The smile that's technically a smile, but feels like a slap. And said, "Of course, some of us have to make do with less. Nothing wrong with that. Not everyone can afford the best." Brandon didn't react. Richard studied his pot roast. Megan scrolled Instagram under the table. I set my fork down and said, "This pot roast is delicious, Karen." "Kill her with kindness," my mother's voice in my head. "Kill her with kindness." We closed on the Trumbull house in March. $385,000, 30-year fixed at 6.2%, monthly payment of $2,150, including taxes and insurance. I handled the closing paperwork, the inspection negotiations, the whole thing. Linda Park, our realtor, told me I was the most organized buyer she'd ever worked with. I kept a color-coded binder with every document, every receipt, every email. Brandon's contribution to the process was showing up to sign where the notary pointed. Moving day was a Saturday in April. Jennifer came to help. Brandon's college buddy Derek brought his truck. Karen and Richard did not come. Karen told Brandon she had a prior engagement, which Megan later accidentally revealed was a hair appointment. I painted the nursery. I'm getting ahead of myself. I didn't know about the baby yet. I painted the spare bedroom a soft gray, thinking it would be a home office. I hung curtains I picked out myself. I arranged our furniture and stocked the kitchen and stood in the middle of our living room on that first night, boxes still stacked everywhere, and thought, this is ours, not Karen's. Not the Hale family's, ours. That feeling lasted about 4 months. The anniversary party had been Karen's idea, of course. Everything was Karen's idea. She and Richard were celebrating 30 years of marriage, and Karen wanted an event. Not a dinner, not a backyard barbecue, but an event. She booked the Grandview Banquet Hall, which ran $8,500 for the evening. She hired a caterer, a DJ, a photographer. She ordered custom invitations on cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. 120 guests. Assigned seating. A dress code that specified black tie optional, which in Karen's language meant black tie mandatory. Brandon was drafted into the planning committee, which meant I was drafted into the planning committee. Starting in June, our weekends disappeared. Karen needed help with the seating chart. Karen needed someone to do a tasting at the caterer. Karen needed opinions on centerpieces, but not really opinions because she'd already decided on white roses and was just looking for confirmation. I was 7 weeks pregnant when the planning started. I'd found out on a Tuesday morning, alone in our bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a test while Brandon was already at work. I sat on the edge of the bathtub for 20 minutes, my hand on my stomach, crying. Happy crying, terrified crying, everything at once crying. I wanted to tell Brandon that night. I'd bought a little onesie that said, "Coming soon," and planned to put it in a gift box. But when he came home, he was on the phone with Karen, arguing about whether the DJ should play Frank Sinatra or Michael Bublé. And by the time he hung up, he was irritated and exhausted and went straight to bed. I told him the next morning over coffee. His face went through about 6 expressions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, fear, and then, finally, a grin that spread across his whole face. He picked me up and spun me around and said, "We're going to be parents. Holy shit, Ash. We're going to be parents." For about 48 hours, everything was perfect. Then Brandon told Karen. I'd wanted to wait 12 weeks at least until we were safely past the first trimester. But Brandon couldn't contain himself. He drove to the Hale house that Saturday and told his mother, and Karen immediately called me. "Ashley, sweetheart, I'm over the moon," she said. "A grandbaby. Oh, this is the best news. Now, I've already been thinking. You'll want to convert that little office into a nursery, and I know a wonderful decorator in Westport who did Megan's friend's baby room, and Karen, we just found out. We're not even telling people yet." A pause. One of Karen's loaded pauses. "Well, you told me." "Brandon told you. We were going to wait." "Oh, Ashley, don't be silly. I'm family. You can't keep something like this from family." Another pause. "Unless you were planning to." "No, we wanted to wait until 12 weeks to make any announcements." Of course. My lips are sealed," she laughed. "But you should really start taking prenatal vitamins. Are you taking them? And no more sushi. I read that raw fish—" "I'm aware, Karen. I've spoken to my OB." "Oh, good. Who's your doctor? Because I know a wonderful one at Yale New Haven. Dr. Priya Mehta. She delivered Megan's friend's baby, the same one with the decorator, and she's just marvelous. Should I make an introduction?" I closed my eyes. "I already have a doctor, but thank you." "Well, just keep her number in your back pocket. You never know." She told Megan by the end of the day. Megan posted a cryptic Instagram story, a baby bottle emoji, and the word "auntie" in sparkly letters by Sunday. By Monday, Brandon's aunt in New Jersey was texting us congratulations. My 12-week plan lasted approximately 72 hours. I was furious. Not the screaming kind, the quiet, corrosive kind that eats at you from the inside. I told Brandon that his mother had violated our trust. He said, "She's just excited, Ash. Cut her some slack." She promised she wouldn't tell anyone. She told Megan. Megan's her daughter. And Megan told Instagram. Brandon sighed. That sigh, I'd come to know it well. It was the sigh that meant, "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." The sigh that meant, "Why can't you just get along with my mother?" The sigh that said, without words, "You are the problem here." "I'll talk to her," he said. He didn't. The anniversary party was on October 14th. By then, I was 5 months pregnant and barely showing, just a slight curve under my dress that I could hide with the right cut. I'd chosen a dark green velvet dress, empire waist, that Jennifer helped me pick out. I felt good in it. I felt, for the first time in weeks, like myself. We arrived at the Grandview at 6:30. The ballroom was stunning. I'll give Karen that. White roses everywhere, gold candelabras, a string quartet playing Vivaldi as guests filtered in. Karen stood near the entrance in a floor-length silver gown, Richard beside her in a classic black tux, both of them greeting guests like royalty receiving subjects. When she saw me, Karen's eyes flicked down to my stomach, then back up. "Green," she said. "Bold choice." "You look beautiful, Karen," I said. "Happy anniversary." She air-kissed my cheek. "Thank you, sweetheart. Oh, I saved you a seat at table 3, next to Richard's sister, Patricia. You two will get along. She's very simple." Table 3 was in the back corner near the kitchen doors. Brandon was at table 1, the family table, with Karen, Richard, Megan, and Karen's closest friends. I'd been separated from my own husband at his parents' anniversary party and seated next to a woman Karen had just called simple. I looked at Brandon. He shrugged. "It's her night, babe. Just go with it." I went with it. I sat at table 3 with Patricia, who was actually lovely, and 3 couples I'd never met. I ate my salad. I smiled during the speeches. I watched from across the room as Karen slow danced with Richard and then with Brandon, and I clapped along with everyone else. The trouble started at 9:15. Karen had arranged a toast, not just any toast, but a family toast, where each member of the Hale family would stand and say something about Karen and Richard's marriage. Megan went first, reading from her phone, something about the blueprint for love. Derek, who apparently counted as family now, told a funny story about a fishing trip with Richard. Then it was Brandon's turn. He stood up, champagne glass in hand, and gave a genuinely sweet speech about his parents, how they'd taught him what commitment looked like, how his mother was the strongest woman he knew, how he hoped to build a marriage just as solid. And then Karen stood up. She wasn't supposed to speak. The toast was for her. But Karen stood up anyway, champagne glass raised, and said, "I just want to add one thing." The room went quiet. 30 years, Karen said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. 30 years of marriage. And the secret? Loyalty. Putting your family first. Always. She looked around the room, and her gaze landed on me. Family is everything. And when you marry someone, you don't just marry them, you marry their family. You accept their traditions, their values, their way of doing things. That's how it works. She was looking directly at me. Some people understand that, Karen continued, and some people need a little more time. The room was so quiet I could hear the kitchen staff clattering dishes behind the swinging doors next to my table. Patricia shifted uncomfortably beside me. I felt my face burning. And then, and I still don't know where this came from, maybe the 5 months of swallowed words, maybe the pregnancy hormones, maybe just the simple fact that I was done. I stood up. "You're right, Karen," I said. My voice was steady, which surprised me. Family is everything, which is why it's so important to treat family with respect. All family, including the people who marry into it. Karen's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "Ashley, sweetheart, this isn't the time." "You made it the time," I said. "You looked right at me." A murmur rippled through the room. Brandon was on his feet. "Ashley, sit down." "No." I turned back to Karen. "I have done everything you've asked. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every phone call. I have bent over backward to make you happy, and it is never enough. You announced my pregnancy after I asked you not to. You tried to choose our house. You seated me in the back of the room at your party like I'm not part of this family." Karen set her glass down. "I will not be spoken to like this at my own event. And I will not be treated like an outsider in my own marriage." The room was frozen. 120 people, forks suspended, mouths open. The string quartet had stopped playing. The only sound was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Brandon crossed the room in 4 strides. He grabbed my elbow, not hard, but firmly, and leaned in close. Outside, now. He walked me through the ballroom doors, down the carpeted hallway, and out the front entrance of the Grandview Banquet Hall. The October air hit me like a wall. It was already raining, a cold, steady rain that had started while we were inside. "What the hell was that?" Brandon hissed. "She was attacking me in front of everyone, Brandon. She was giving a toast at her own anniversary party. She was staring at me and talking about people who need more time. You heard it. Everyone heard it." Brandon ran his hand through his hair. "You humiliated her." "She humiliated me first. She's been humiliating me for 3 years." "That's my mother, Ashley." "And I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child." He stared at me. The rain was getting heavier. My dress was already darkening with water. Brandon stood under the awning, dry, and he looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was some woman who'd wandered in off the street and ruined his evening. "Don't come back inside," he said quietly, "until you're ready to get on your knees and apologize to my mother." Then he turned and walked back through the doors. I stood there, rain streaming down my face, mixing with mascara and tears. My phone was dead. My purse was inside, on table 3, next to my untouched slice of cake. I had no car keys, no wallet, no way to call Jennifer or my parents or anyone. I was 5 months pregnant, soaking wet, alone on a sidewalk in suburban Connecticut on a Saturday night. And that's when the black SUV pulled up. I watched it approach, slow, deliberate, headlights cutting through the rain. It stopped at the curb directly in front of me. The passenger window lowered. A man leaned across, navy suit, calm eyes, an umbrella already in his hand. He opened the door and extended the umbrella toward me so it covered my head. "You look like you need to get out of the rain," he said. I should have been afraid. A stranger, a dark car, a rainy night. Every true crime podcast I'd ever listened to was screaming in my head. But there was something about his voice, something unhurried and certain, and I was so cold, so tired, so completely emptied out by everything that had just happened, that fear felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled, not a grin, not a smirk, just a quiet smile. Someone who knows exactly what's happening inside that ballroom, and someone who's been waiting a very long time for Karen Hale's house of cards to start falling. My hand was on the car door handle before my brain caught up. I hesitated. "My name is Nathan Cross," he said, "and I promise you, by tomorrow morning, you're going to understand everything." I got in the car. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and through the rain-streaked rear window, I watched the golden glow of the Grandview Banquet Hall shrink and disappear. Inside, 120 people were probably whispering about what I'd done. Karen was probably crying. Real tears or performed ones, it didn't matter. Brandon was probably at her side, comforting her, choosing her. He was always choosing her. Nathan drove in silence for a few minutes. The car smelled like leather and cedar. The heater was on, warm air washing over my soaked skin. He handed me a wool blanket from the back seat without a word, and I wrapped it around my shoulders, shivering. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere dry, somewhere safe, and somewhere you can see what I have to show you." "That's not an answer." He glanced at me. "My office. It's 12 minutes from here. There's hot coffee, a change of clothes my assistant keeps for emergencies, and a file that's going to change your life. A file. About the Hale family, about Karen specifically, and about a financial arrangement your husband failed to mention to you." My stomach dropped. "What arrangement?" Nathan kept his eyes on the road. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm. "How much do you know about your husband's business finances, Ashley?" "I handle our household budget. Brandon handles his commercial real estate deals separately." "And you've never looked at his business accounts?" He has a business manager, a guy named... I stopped. Why would you know any of this? Nathan pulled the SUV into a parking garage beneath a glass office building I didn't recognize. He killed the engine and turned to face me fully. In the overhead light, I could see he was maybe 40, dark hair with gray at the temples, a face that looked like it had been through things and come out sharper on the other side. Because 3 years ago, he said, Karen Hale destroyed my family's company, and your husband helped her do it. I stared at him. The parking garage was silent, except for the ticking of the cooling engine and the muffled sound of rain on concrete above us. What are you talking about? I said. Karen's a retired real estate agent. She didn't destroy anyone's company. Nathan reached into the back seat and pulled out a leather messenger bag. From it, he extracted a thick manila folder, the kind with a metal clasp, stuffed so full the edges were fraying. He set it on the console between us. Karen Hale hasn't been a retired real estate agent for a long time, he said. She's been a silent partner in your husband's commercial real estate firm for the past 7 years. She holds 42% of Hale Commercial Properties through a shell LLC registered in Delaware. The company's registered agent is a man named Vincent Briggs. My breath caught. Vincent, that's Brandon's business manager. That's Karen's business manager. He's worked for her since 2016. Brandon is the face, but Karen runs the numbers. She always has. I looked at the folder. My hands were shaking. From the cold, from the adrenaline, from something deeper that I couldn't name yet. Why should I believe any of this? Open the folder. I did. The first page was a corporate filing from the state of Delaware. Coastal Holdings LLC, registered August 2017. Members listed: Karen M. Hale, 42%, Brandon R. Hale, 38%, Vincent P. Briggs, 20%. Below it, a second filing, Hale Commercial Properties, with Coastal Holdings listed as the parent entity. I turned the page. Bank statements, wire transfers, numbers that made my eyes blur. $180,000 here, $340,000 there, moving between accounts I'd never heard of. One transfer caught my eye. $60,000 from Coastal Holdings to a personal account belonging to Karen M. Hale, dated the same month she'd offered us the down payment for the Fairfield house. She was going to buy us that house with money from Brandon's own company, I whispered. Your husband's company that she secretly co-owns, Nathan corrected. The $60,000 wasn't a gift, it was a leash. If you'd taken it, she'd have had financial leverage over your home and your husband's business. One signature away from pulling the rug out anytime she wanted. I closed the folder. My hands were trembling. You still haven't told me who you are, or why you have all this. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My father was Gerald Cross. He owned Cross Development, a commercial real estate firm in Stamford. 15 years in business, 22 employees, a solid reputation. In 2021, Karen Hale approached my father about a joint venture, a mixed-use development in Norwalk, retail and residential, $4.2 million project. She came through Hale Commercial Properties, which at the time we believed was just Brandon's outfit. What happened? My father invested $1.1 million. Karen structured the deal so that Coastal Holdings controlled the financing. 6 months in, she triggered a clause in the contract, a clause my father's attorney missed, that allowed Coastal to absorb Cross Development's stake if certain benchmarks weren't met. Benchmarks that Karen deliberately sabotaged by delaying permits she was responsible for obtaining. His voice was steady, but I could see his jaw tightening. She took everything: the project, the investment, the contracts my father had spent years building. Cross Development folded in March 2022. My father had a stroke 2 months later. He's in assisted living now, doesn't recognize me most days. The parking garage felt like it was closing in. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I didn't bring you here for sympathy, he said. I brought you here because you're the only person inside that family who might actually care about the truth. And because what Karen did to my father, she's been doing to other people. Smaller operators, independent developers. She uses Brandon as the front man, charms them into deals, and then strips them clean. I thought about Brandon, my Brandon, who cooked on Sundays and remembered my cat's name and proposed at a tiny Italian restaurant in New Haven. The man who spun me around the kitchen when I told him about the baby. He knows? I asked. The question came out broken. He signs the documents, Ashley, every single one. I pressed my palms against my eyes. The baby moved, a small flutter, like a reminder that whatever I was feeling, there was someone else depending on me to feel it clearly. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing tonight. Tonight, I just need you to know the truth. What you do with it is up to you. He paused. But I should tell you, I've filed a civil lawsuit against Coastal Holdings. It's been working through the courts for 8 months. Discovery is in 2 weeks. When it hits, everything in that folder becomes public record. Your husband's name, Karen's name, every transaction. 2 weeks, I repeated. Which means whatever you decide about your marriage, you should decide it before the rest of the world decides for you. He drove me to Jennifer's apartment. I didn't even have to give him the address. He already knew it, which should have frightened me, but didn't. By the time we pulled up to her building in Stamford, it was nearly midnight. The rain had stopped. The streets were wet and reflective, everything looking like a mirror of itself. My number's on the inside of the folder, Nathan said as I opened the door. Call me when you're ready. Or don't. But Ashley, whatever happens, don't let them make you believe you're the one who did something wrong tonight. I walked into Jennifer's building carrying a manila folder and wearing a soaked green velvet dress, and when she opened her door, she took one look at me and pulled me inside without a word. She wrapped me in a towel, made me chamomile tea, and sat on the couch beside me while I cried so hard I thought I might break something inside myself. I didn't show her the folder that night. I couldn't. I just told her about the party, Karen's speech, my response, Brandon dragging me outside, the rain, the words. Get on your knees and apologize to my mother. Jennifer's face went through about 7 stages of fury, and when I finished, she said very quietly, I'm going to kill him. Jen, I'm going to kill him and bury him in a HOA-approved garden bed, and nobody will ever find the body. I almost laughed. Almost. She set me up in her spare bedroom, the one that still had my old desk from when we'd been roommates. I lay on the bed, one hand on my stomach, staring at the ceiling. My phone was still dead, still sitting on table 3 next to my untouched cake. Brandon hadn't come looking for me. He hadn't called Jennifer. He hadn't called anyone, as far as I knew. His wife was 5 months pregnant, alone in the rain, with no phone and no way home, and he'd gone back inside to comfort his mother. That thought sat on my chest like a stone. I didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I got up, sat at Jennifer's kitchen table, and opened Nathan's folder. I went through every page. Corporate filings, bank statements, email printouts, conversations between Karen and Vincent Briggs discussing the cross situation in language so clinical it made my stomach turn. One email from Karen, dated February 2022, read, Gerald is going to push back. Let Brandon handle the call. He's better at sounding sympathetic. Let Brandon handle the call. He's better at sounding sympathetic. I thought about all those times Brandon listened to me so carefully, the way he made me feel heard, the way he nodded and said, I understand, babe. Was any of it real? Or was I just another person Brandon was handling? At 5 a.m., Jennifer found me at the table, papers spread everywhere, my face swollen from crying. What is all this? She asked. I told her everything. Nathan Cross, Coastal Holdings, the Shell LLC, the $1.1 million, Gerald Cross and Assisted Living, the lawsuit, 2 weeks until discovery. Jennifer sat down slowly, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. Ashley, you need a lawyer. I know. Not a marriage counselor, a lawyer. Today. I know. She pulled out her phone. My cousin Diana, remember her? She's a divorce attorney in Hartford. She's brutal. In a good way. Let me call her. It's 5 a.m. Diana gets up at 4:30. She runs before work. She's insane. Jennifer was already texting. I'm telling her it's an emergency. By 7 a.m., I had an appointment for 10 a.m. with Diana Castillo, family law attorney, offices on Asylum Street in Hartford. Jennifer lent me clean clothes, black pants, a gray sweater that stretched over my bump. She dried my shoes with a hairdryer. She handed me a phone charger and said, "Plug in. Let's see what he sent you." My phone powered on at 7:22 a.m. 17 text messages, 11 from Brandon, 4 from Megan, 2 from a number I didn't recognize. Brandon's texts, in order, 8:02 p.m. Mom is devastated. I hope you're happy. 9:15 p.m. Where are you? 9:47 p.m. Ashley, answer your phone. 10:30 p.m. I'm not coming to look for you until you're ready to apologize. 11:15 p.m. Seriously, where are you? 11:58 p.m. Fine, stay wherever you are. We'll talk tomorrow. 12:30 a.m. Mom cried the entire rest of the night. The photographer couldn't even get the family photo because she was so upset. 1:15 a.m. I can't believe you did this. 2 a.m. Derek says I should give you space, so I'm giving you space. 6:45 a.m. Are you at Jennifer's? 7:01 a.m. Come home. We need to talk. Don't bring Jennifer. Megan's texts were worse. You ruined my mom's anniversary. Everyone is talking about what you did. Brandon deserves better. My mom always said you weren't right for this family, and I guess she was right. The 2 unknown texts were from Patricia, Richard's sister, the woman Karen had called Simple. Her messages read, Ashley, I saw what happened. Karen was out of line. I'm sorry no one stood up for you. If you need anything, this is my number. Patricia. I stared at Patricia's messages for a long time. Then I saved her number. Jennifer drove me to Hartford. In the car, I held the manila folder on my lap and watched Connecticut scroll past the window. The turning leaves, the white churches, the neat suburban lawns, all of it looking exactly the same as it always had, even though everything underneath had shifted. Diana Castillo's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. She was small, sharp-eyed, with black hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her handshake could crack a walnut. Sit, she said. Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out, and don't try to make anyone look good, including yourself. So I told her. The marriage, Karen, the house, the pregnancy announcement, the anniversary party, Brandon's words in the rain, Nathan Cross, and the folder. Diana listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took the folder, flipped through it for 10 minutes, and then set it down. 3 things, she said, holding up fingers. First, do not go home until we have a strategy. Second, do not communicate with Brandon except through text and save everything. Third, this folder changes the math significantly. How? If your husband has been concealing business assets through a shell LLC, assets that should have been disclosed as marital property, that's fraud. In Connecticut, marital property includes business interests acquired during the marriage. If Coastal Holdings has been generating income that Brandon hid from you, you're entitled to your share, and a judge will not look kindly on concealment. My mouth was dry. What about the baby? Diana's expression softened, just barely. The baby makes everything more urgent and more important. Custody, support, medical decisions. We need to move carefully, but we need to move now. She stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the Hartford skyline. Here's what I want you to do this week. Go back to Jennifer's. Don't go home yet. Let Brandon stew. Meanwhile, I'm going to pull every public filing on Coastal Holdings and cross-reference with Nathan Cross's lawsuit. If even half of what's in this folder holds up, your husband's exposure isn't just civil, it could be criminal. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Criminal? Wire fraud. If they moved money across state lines through that Delaware LLC to defraud investors like Gerald Cross, that's federal territory. Diana turned back to me. Ashley, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Okay. Do you want to save your marriage, or do you want to protect yourself and your child? The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about Brandon spinning me around the kitchen. I thought about him standing under the awning, dry, while I stood in the rain. I thought about, let Brandon handle the call. He's better at sounding sympathetic. I want to protect my child, I said, whatever that takes. Diana nodded. Good. Then we start today. She handed me a legal pad and a pen. Write down every asset you know about, every account, every property, every dollar amount you can remember. And then write down every lie you've caught, dates, details, everything. I want a timeline. I started writing. The pen moved across the page, and with every line, every number, every date I pulled from memory, I felt something shifting inside me. Not anger, something colder and more useful than anger. Clarity. For 3 years, I'd been trying to earn my place in the Hale family. Trying to be sweet enough, accommodating enough, small enough to fit inside the box Karen had built for me. And the whole time, behind the Sunday dinners and the white peonies and the air kisses, they'd been running a machine that chewed up people like Gerald Cross and spit them out broken. I wasn't going to be next. I looked up from the legal pad. Diana, one more thing. Yes? Nathan Cross said discovery in his lawsuit is in 2 weeks. When that happens, all of this becomes public. Diana smiled, a thin razor smile. Then we'd better make sure we're ahead of it. I walked out of that office at noon with a folder full of legal documents, a retainer agreement, and the first strategic plan I'd made in 3 years that wasn't about keeping Karen Hale happy. Jennifer was waiting in the car, engine running. How'd it go? She asked. I buckled my seatbelt. The baby fluttered again, stronger this time, like a kick. It went well, I said. Now I need to make a phone call. I picked up Jennifer's phone and dialed Nathan Cross's number. He answered on the second ring. Ashley, Nathan said, I was hoping you'd call. I need to meet with you again, I said, today if possible. I have a lawyer now, and she's going to want to see everything you have. I can do better than that, he said. I have a meeting scheduled with my attorney on Monday morning. Joint session. Your lawyer is welcome to sit in. But Ashley, there's something else you should know before then. What? Brandon called me last night at 11 p.m. I nearly dropped the phone. Brandon called you? He knows who you are? He knows exactly who I am. He's known about my lawsuit for 8 months, and last night he called to threaten me. Told me if I didn't drop the case, he'd, and I'm quoting, make sure I regretted it. I recorded the call. Connecticut is a one-party consent state. Jennifer glanced at me from the driver's seat. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost because she mouthed, "What?" I held up a finger. Nathan, send that recording to my lawyer. Her name is Diana Castillo. I gave him the number. And I'll see you Monday. I hung up and stared straight ahead at the highway. Jennifer waited exactly 4 seconds before saying, "Spill." Brandon threatened Nathan Cross on a recorded phone call last night, while I was standing in the rain, while he was supposedly so worried about his mother's feelings that he couldn't come find his pregnant wife. He was on the phone threatening the man who's suing his company. Jennifer's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Monday can't come fast enough. Monday came, and it brought a hurricane. Diana's office felt different this time, sharper, charged, like a war room. Nathan was already there with his attorney, a tall man named Robert Fleischer, who specialized in commercial fraud litigation. They had 3 banker's boxes of documents stacked against the wall. Diana had her own stack. She'd spent the weekend pulling every public filing on Coastal Holdings, Hale Commercial Properties, and Vincent Briggs. The 4 of us sat around Diana's conference table for 3 hours. Robert walked us through the cross-development case, the $4.2 million Norwalk project, the sabotaged permits, the clause that let Coastal absorb Gerald Cross's $1.1 million investment. He had emails. He had bank records. He had a sworn affidavit from a former Hale commercial employee who'd quit in 2022 after being asked to backdate permit applications. The employee's name is Sarah Cho, Robert said. She worked as Brandon's office manager for 2 years. She's prepared to testify. Diana leaned forward. And the recording from Saturday night? Nathan pulled out his phone and pressed play. Brandon's voice filled the room. Tight, aggressive, nothing like the boyish charm I'd married. You need to drop this, Cross. You don't know what you're getting into. My mother has connections you can't even imagine. Drop the lawsuit or I will bury you. Diana looked at me. Your husband said that. That's his voice, I confirmed. My hands were flat on the table to keep them from shaking. Diana nodded slowly. Here's the play. Nathan's discovery hearing is in 12 days. When those documents enter the public record, Brandon and Karen lose any ability to control the narrative. But I don't want to wait for discovery. I want to file your divorce petition this week, citing concealment of marital assets, financial fraud, and emotional abuse. We attach the Coastal Holdings filings as exhibits. We request an emergency freeze on all accounts associated with the LLC. Can you do that? I asked. Connecticut General Statutes, Section 46B-83. The court can issue a restraining order on assets if there's evidence of dissipation or concealment. And honey, we have evidence coming out of our ears. Diana filed the petition on Wednesday. By Thursday morning, a judge had issued a temporary restraining order, freezing $1.4 million in accounts linked to Coastal Holdings. Brandon was served at his office at 2:15 p.m. He called me 17 times in 1 hour. I didn't answer. At 3:30, he texted, "What have you done?" I replied, the only text Diana had authorized. All communication goes through my attorney, Diana Castillo, 860-555-0147. Then I turned off my phone. Karen called Jennifer's landline at 6 p.m. Jennifer answered, listened for approximately 8 seconds, and said, "Karen, if you contact Ashley directly again, her attorney will file a harassment complaint. Have a lovely evening," and hung up. She was screaming, Jennifer reported. Actual screaming. Something about betrayal and how you were always an ungrateful little... She stopped. You don't need to hear the rest. I didn't. I already knew. The next 10 days were a blur of legal filings, court dates, and sleepless nights. Diana moved with terrifying efficiency. She subpoenaed Brandon's personal bank records and found $86,000 in transfers from Coastal Holdings to an account Karen controlled. Transfers that occurred during our marriage and were never disclosed to me. She found that the Fairfield house Karen had wanted us to buy was actually owned by Coastal Holdings through another shell entity. If we'd purchased it, we would have been paying rent to Karen's own LLC without knowing it. She was building a cage, Diana said when she showed me the documents. A beautiful 4-bedroom cage with a HOA and a 2-car garage. Discovery in Nathan's lawsuit hit on a Tuesday. Robert Fleischer had submitted 340 pages of documents to the court. By Wednesday morning, a reporter from the Stamford Advocate had picked up the story. By Thursday, it was in the Hartford Courant. Local real estate firm accused of investor fraud. Shell companies linked to prominent Fairfield County family. Karen Hale's name was in the 3rd paragraph. Brandon tried one last play. He showed up at Jennifer's apartment on a Friday evening, unannounced, wild-eyed, his BMW parked crooked at the curb. Jennifer opened the door with the chain on. "I need to talk to my wife," he said. "Your wife doesn't want to talk to you." "Ashley," he shouted past Jennifer. "Ashley, please, we can fix this. Just come home. We'll go to counseling. I'll talk to Mom, whatever you want." I walked to the door. I stood behind Jennifer and looked at him through the 4-inch gap. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles, his shirt wrinkled. For one fraction of a second, I felt something pull in my chest, the memory of who I thought he was. "Brandon," I said, "did you know about the cross-development deal?" His face flickered. It's complicated." "Did you sign the documents?" "My mother handled, did you sign them?" Silence. His jaw worked. "Yes." "Did you know Gerald Cross had a stroke?" "Ashley, Did you know that man is in assisted living because your mother stole his life's work and you helped her do it? He pressed his forehead against the doorframe. I didn't have a choice. You don't understand what she's like. When Mom decides something, I understand exactly what she's like, I said. That's why I'm leaving. I closed the door. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Diana got me the house in Trumbull, free and clear, no mortgage, paid from Brandon's share of the frozen Coastal Holdings assets as part of the settlement. I got full custody of our daughter Lily, who was born in February, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with my dark hair and Brandon's blue eyes. Brandon got supervised visitation every other weekend, contingent on completing a court-ordered financial ethics program. Karen and Brandon were named as co-defendants in Nathan's civil suit. The court awarded Gerald Cross's estate $2.8 million in damages. Coastal Holdings was dissolved by court order. Vincent Briggs cooperated with federal investigators and received a reduced sentence, 18 months, for his role in the wire fraud scheme. Brandon was charged with 2 counts of wire fraud. His case is still pending as of this writing. Karen, the architect of it all, pleaded no contest to 1 count of conspiracy and received 3 years probation and a $400,000 fine. Her real estate license, the one she'd let lapse but always bragged about, was permanently revoked. Richard filed for divorce from Karen 2 months after the court ruling. Patricia told me. She and I had become friends. Real friends, the kind who text each other at midnight and show up with soup when the baby has a cold. Patricia said Richard had known about Coastal Holdings for years, but hadn't understood the scope until the lawsuit. He's ashamed, she told me. He should be. Megan deleted her Instagram. Nathan Cross visits his father every Sunday. Gerald has good days and bad days. On the good days, Nathan tells him they won. On the bad days, he just sits and holds his hand. I ran into Brandon once at a Target in Trumbull, 3 months after the divorce was final. He was in the checkout line with a basket of frozen dinners. I was buying diapers and a stuffed elephant for Lily. We made eye contact. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. I walked past him without stopping. Jennifer asked me once if I regretted standing up at that anniversary party, if I wished I'd stayed quiet, stayed seated at table 3, swallowed it one more time. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, I said. That was the first honest thing I'd done in 3 years. Lily is 8 months old now. She sleeps in the nursery I painted soft gray, the room I once thought would be a home office. Oliver the cat guards her crib like a sentinel. The Trumbull house is quiet in the mornings, and on Sundays we don't go anywhere we don't want to go. My credit score is 762. My 401k is rebuilding. My name is Ashley Brennan again. I dropped Hale the day the divorce was finalized. And if you take one thing from my story, let it be this. The moment someone tells you to get on your knees and apologize for telling the truth, that's the moment you stand up and walk into the rain. Because sometimes the storm outside is safer than the silence you've been drowning in. And sometimes the stranger with the umbrella knows more about your life than the man who promised to share it.